feature presentation.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to the 8th best movie podcast in Canada. Yes, that's a true thing. It's not a joke, even though I played it as a joke. Shout out to
People
Kate
have
from
asked. People have
Elevation.
asked.
I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside. He's allergic to tomatoes, but he is Tomato Meter approved. Eric Margin.
Matt, I like how you grabbed the mic there at the beginning. It's just like you were really intense.
I try to do that, now.
Just like
It's
I
been
gotta give this to the people.
Eric, episode 129.
Yep.
We're here. We did it.
We made it.
How are you?
End it after this.
Yep.
I'm fine.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm good. Just enjoying this weekend by staying indoors and reading a book, and
You're reading a
Yeah,
book, which is
I
we
am.
don't talk about books that often here.
No, we don't.
We've tried to review.
This isn't book club, Matt.
Yeah, what is this? The Untitled Book Podcast? No one wants to listen to that. Kidding. People who love reading, good for you. I'll just wait till a movie gets made out of it. Because I rarely get through books. My attention span, Eric. I just can't. I can barely get through an hour and a half movie now. That I can't.
Unless it's
sit down and
narrated
read
by
a
Will
book.
Wheaton.
Yeah, well, that was a while ago. I never got through Ready Player 2. Not that I needed to anyway, but I tried. Didn't listen to Will Wheaton on that one. Or I tried to. Just didn't stick with me. I read the Seth Rogen book, which was excellent, and listened to the audiobook for that too. And I've tried. I have a bunch of books that I want to read, but you are reading Heat too.
I am. It was so I got the 4K copy of Heat. I mean, Heat's one of I honestly do think that Heat's probably my favorite Michael Mann movie. So it's a long film. It's 3 hours, and I threw it on Friday night and watched it, and was like, I really loved rewatching that movie. And
yeah, I really want to rewatch it.
And now I want to spend more time with these characters and with Michael Mann, because it's been a while since he made a movie. The last film was Black Hat, which I think was 2015.
Still haven't seen it.
It's not great.
Some people really like it though, right?
They do. I'm still curious to kind of watch. There was a director's cut that was released on some network, and it was like an exclusive thing, and then it kind of disappeared. Like it's never been released on Blu-ray or on streaming services. So yeah, so with it, I mean, he's directing a new movie right now, Ferrari. So that'll be interesting next year, I guess, with that coming out. But with Heat 2, I bought it like a digital copy because I didn't want to wait for it, because I was just like in the mood. And so I just started reading it, and I'm only about halfway through, but I love it. It's one of these books that, like, it completely grabs you in the first couple of pages, and then you just cannot stop. It is so dense, but it's not overwhelming in any way. Like it's so kind of like character focused in sort of Pacino and De Niro's characters, because the story is basically split into two, kind of like The Godfather Part 2, where like in Heat 2 you have De Niro and Pacino's characters in 88, and then sort of the second half of the story takes place in 2001, 2002, and it's from mostly the point of view of Pacino and Pacino's Hannah character. And with the 80s stuff, you see kind of like Hannah honing in his kind of detective craft, but also kind of being this like bit of a drug addict as well, which kind of never was talked about in the movie, which I thought was kind of interesting, and sort of him kind of really honing in on not only his craft, but just kind of being addicted to the lifestyle of that adrenaline rush of, you have to kind of like find that little thing that kind of leads you on a trail to kind of, bust the criminal, and how a lot of it is paperwork and procedural, but then at the same time it kind of just completely engulfs
I meant to mute myself and then I just coughed right into the microphone. Sorry.
Hey man, it's this.
I hit
This is
I
our
hit the
regular show. It's all
I
good.
hit the hand raise button instead of the mute. Sorry, Eric.
No, that's okay. And then with De Niro, I mean, spoiler alert: De Niro's Neil dies at the end of Heat. So the first half of it taking place in '88 is kind of him doing a score in Mexico and kind of assembling the team that you'll come to see in Heat. And then with the book, you're kind of also following Val Kilmer's character, Chris, and sort of his relationship with Charlene. And then on top of all of that, there's this kind of like really disturbing villain that is kind of looming in the shadows that kind of is coming back in like the 2000 stuff. I don't know how Michael Mann and Megan Gardner's book could be adapted into a
The
feature.
almost impossible, right? Like
Yeah, because Michael Mann was talking on the Empire podcast or the website, and he was saying that he is going to adapt Heat 2 into a film. And I mean, part of the problem is, the age thing, obviously, but also the story taking place in those two sections is like, do you recast everybody and
I
have
guess you
new
would
actors?
have to. I wouldn't want to go to the de-aging thing.
No, because I mean, it would be mostly just Pacino and Kilmer in that case, and Ashley Judd as well, because Charlene plays a really important role. But then, like, you look at it as well, it's like, well, I mean, if you change the timeline in the 2000s part of it and moved it up to today, you could bring Pacino back, although at that point Pacino would be, I mean, Pacino now is in his 80s,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like, what do you do with that? So like, that's going to be interesting to be like, so it's going to be Heat 2, but at the same time, do you like, do you like, because Pacino was like, oh, I'll get Timothy Chalamet to play, a version of Hannah. So like, how does that work out? Where, like, do you just kind of ignore the continuity of before or not? So
Yeah, I think you probably just go the recasting route and hope everyone's fine with that because you understand it's a movie and like that happens. Like
yeah,
you hope that's the route that they take, and maybe you do bring back some of the actors for the, like you said, you could maybe change the time period so you don't have to de-age them 20 years because you said it's early 2000s. The other,
yeah.
yeah,
So like, after like, there's some stuff in there where it kind of feels like it's building up more to the 2000s in the last kind of half of the book, but you
yeah,
have Pacino's character kind of picking up where the 95 movie kind of left off in the early 2000s and see where he is now and kind of remembering Neil and stuff like that. And then, like, again, like this other villain that kind of is kind of around, but he's almost like the Blofeld of this,
interesting.
where like he's kind of referenced a lot. He's always changing his name, so he's never caught, and he's also just a very disturbing character.
Cool,
The other thing that I was kind of surprised with, and I don't mean to sound salacious by saying this, but it is very sexual. Like, the book is
interesting.
extremely graphic with sexual depictions, and like, the movie isn't like, the movie really wasn't about
Yeah,
that, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, it's really detailed in how
interesting.
sexually explicit it is. So it's like, I wonder how they would do that for a movie, because like, the way it reads on the page is NC-17.
Right. Well,
Um
you just cut it to be
yeah.
more, or you just don't include
But
all
I
of
was
the.
just surprised because Michael Mann, when you think of Michael Mann movies, his films, they have a kind of sex appeal, but they're not necessarily about those kind of very intimate relationships kind of depicted on screen. Like, you
Heat
don't
2 erotic thriller confirmed.
That's kind of what it feels like at times. So, and I don't mean that in like a trashy kind of way, or
Yeah.
like a B movie kind of way, but I was just kind of surprised because with that, there is relationships within the first Heat movie, but it never goes to the places that this does.
Cool.
And that I found kind of weirdly, kind of like a bit of a left turn. But yeah,
I'm
it's
gonna
really
get.
good.
I'm gonna give Heat a rewatch. I have the 4K digital version, so I'll probably watch that. And then been meaning to rewatch it. I think Nevis wants to watch it too. So I am excited because it's been a while, but I remember when I watched Heat in my teens, I absolutely loved it, and it is a classic. And I'd be curious. I would read the book. Like, who knows how long it'll take to make that sequel, and I don't even know if it ever will be made, to be honest. But like, even how you're describing it to me, unless it's something completely different, like Heat 2, the movie, might be completely different than Heat 2, the book. But
Right. Well, then
I
also
don't
you
know.
have to think like the original Heat was shot on film. Michael Mann was an early adopter of
Adopter, yeah.
digital, and like everything he shot. I mean, like some of Collateral is shot digitally, and so is Miami Vice, the movie. But like everything after that he
Public
did
Enemies, I like,
was all digital.
and
Like
it looked awful
it
because of
did, it
it.
did.
Yeah.
I mean, contemporary stuff it works,
Yes.
but period stuff it doesn't. So
I would
like,
love if he shot it both on digital and film, right? Like, shoot
yeah,
the 80s stuff in on film, shoot the 2000s stuff on digital, and I think that could be a cool juxtaposition if you end up doing it. Like, I
yeah.
think that could be fun, but
Well, that's why I'm
uh
worried about Ferrari as well, because Ferrari is a period piece and it's shot. I think Eric Messerschmidt is shooting it digitally.
yeah, which doesn't surprise me, but you've intrigued me, and I will try to watch Heat. We're very busy for the next month or so, but
Yeah,
maybe I'll throw it on at some
but it is
point. But
worthwhile if you're a fan of Michael Mann, if you're a fan of Heat, and like it doesn't feel like a cash grab or anything like that. Like it feels like something that like Mann took so long to develop Heat. Like it even started as like a TV movie with L.A. Takedown, and then that was kind of like the rough version of what Heat became. And I remember even like William Peterson talking about Michael Mann kind of pitching him on Heat when they were doing Manhunter together. Um, so he's kind of had those characters in his head for such a long time that like him releasing this book, even if it doesn't become a film, it adds so much more to
the
the
movie,
world and the characters. And like like when you're reading it, you see Pacino and De Niro,
yeah.
in the scenes, and like it has so much, like it plays on your imagination but expands on the world that he's created. And yeah, I just kind of miss Michael Mann because like he hasn't
Yeah.
directed a movie in a while, and like it's like that perfect fix.
Nice, man. You and I went to a TIFF press conference. So it's TIFF season, baby. I know we've been doing TIFF talks. You guys can check out our standalone episode that we did 2 episodes ago. Wasn't a numbered episode or anything, but you can check that out on the Untitled Movie Podcast feed or on YouTube, where we broke down the galas and special presentations. We've also been doing little mini TIFF talks in each episode. So we're doing another TIFF talk here. We actually went to an in-person event where they did the announcement of the Canadian slate of films that will be playing the festival. So TIFF every year, in the before times or the regular times, would do this event where it was a celebration of Canadian film and it being a Canadian film festival. So a lot of the press in the area go down, and it's more so of like a kickoff for the festival, almost like an unofficial kickoff for press rather than like a huge announcement, because a lot of the Canadian films were already announced. There were a few kind of things that they announced at this conference, as well as some shorts and stuff like that. Matthew Rankin has a short playing the festival.
Municipal relaxation module.
And it looks, just from the screenshot we saw, it looks very funny. And yeah, it was a fun event. Like Eric and I went down, we met up with our old friend Adriana Floridia, who we used to do the podcast with. She's now at Cineplex. So we hung out with her, kind of had some food and talked to some PR people, and just kind of hung out, and then watched this press conference where they announced these films, as well as had some government officials come up and talk about that they're giving TIFF $10 million to kind of bounce back from the pandemic, as well as the Canadian Film Board, right?
Yeah,
Canadian Film
yeah,
Board.
it was mostly housekeeping stuff,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, okay, we're giving you guys grants and tax write-offs, to help, because we realize that this is a big sort of draw internationally speaking each and every year, and this is the first year, we've talked about this already before, where it's now all in person again, and so we're getting, back into kind of what TIFF was before the pandemic, and hopefully, you know cutting things off, like the King Street thing, right? Like
Yeah,
that's always kind of been
Festival Street. Yeah.
Festival Street for that first weekend has always kind of been a popular kind of thing, and it all happening kind of pretty much in that one sort of small pocket this year, I think is also interesting.
Yeah, it's something we haven't really talked about that much, but they've kind of tweaked it and they've slowly been moving the festival towards that festival street for years, right? Because it used to be way more spread out. Like we used to go to Varsity for screenings, and there used to be stuff at Hot Docs on
Oh
Bloor
God.
Street.
I remember that
Like
you would schedule stuff. It's like, oh, I don't want to go all the way out.
Isabel Bader up in like the university, right?
Yeah.
And so this year, and then there was the Ryerson Theater, former Ryerson Theater, as well as the Elgin and the Winter Garden on Young Street, Young and Queen. And so now they've kind of, we are back to a quote unquote normal festival, but everything is on that one strip of King Street, basically. The furthest north you have to go now is Scotiabank on Richmond, and like everything else is right on King, which I think is very smart for the festival. You have the hub at TIFF Bell Lightbox, and then you have Scotiabank, which is kind of your press hub, as well as some public screenings over there too. And then you have Princess of Wales. Now we have the oh God, what is the new theater? Queen Alexander, right? Or
Yes.
Alexandra
Yeah.
theater, as well as Roy Thompson Hall, all on that street as your big premier venues, right? With thousands of seats and stuff like that. So, and I think we still have Jackman Hall at the AGO for wavelengths and things like that. So maybe that's the furthest north you have to go for that. But it's everything on King Street now, which I think is Festival Street's coming back. This big investment in TIFF, like it's just good to see the festival kind of bounce back after some hard times, and it'll be kind of exciting to see it, play out fully in person again this year with some digital screenings.
Yeah. It was also great to see one of the politicians call Cameron Bailey Cam,
Yeah, I called him Cam quite a bit. Yeah.
which was really weird.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe they're on a cam to cam basis. I don't know, but I don't know if his name was Cam. I don't even remember what his name was, but it was like the Minister of Public Safety or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or like, yeah. So
Of Young and Eglinton or something like that. Yeah.
I don't know. But anyways, had a good time. Not much to talk about. You guys can check out. Like we've talked about most of the films that were announced already. It's just there's the whole Canadian slate, looking good. So I'm
Yeah,
excited.
I liked what Clement Virgo had to say though. Like I
Yes,
think
sorry,
that
I
like
forgot he was at the event as well.
I think like out of all the people that were there, he felt the most genuine, and it wasn't necessarily like a written script
Yeah.
that he had kind of prepared. And one moment that kind of stuck out to me, because he has his film brother playing the festival, is that he talked about, for the first time filmmakers and people that are still kind of making their way up, to really enjoy the moment and see the other films, because a lot of the people you'll be see or a lot of the films that are at the festival will be your contemporaries, so it's good to know like who's making what and what kind of films are being kind of put out there, but also just knowing the people that you'll probably be collaborating with, but also seeing their films down the line as well. So you're growing up with these filmmakers in this kind of new wave of Canadian films. Like that seemed to be kind of an emphasis of the Canadian press conference, is that, this is kind of the beginning of a new generation of filmmakers coming in.
Absolutely. I thought he, like you said, it didn't feel like it was this planned thing. It felt like off the cuff and really passionate and honest, and seemed like he really cares about the festival, which we all do, which is why we go to an event like this. And even though there wasn't much necessarily to cover, it was just like, I'm excited about TIFF. I'm excited about these films, and I'm excited to talk about them on this show. And you guys know, anyone who's listening or watching, that like this is our busy time from probably starting next week up until September 18th. We're going to be, balls to the wall, reviewing stuff constantly, trying to review as much as possible. So it's gonna be this is gonna be fun, man. It's basically here. Like
Yeah.
I know we have Fan Expo before that. We have a few, it is pretty quiet when it comes to like reviews and things like that this month, but you guys can check out our reviews for I Am Groot and She-Hulk, which She-Hulk should be out soon. Not if you're listening to this right on Monday, but should be pretty soon. Before the premiere, for the first 4 episodes. But I'm excited for TIFF, man. Can't wait. Can't wait till that schedule comes out and get to kind of go through TIFFer and stuff like that. And
That's where the fun comes in, right?
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, again, there's not a lot in August in terms of big releases. It kind of has already happened with Bullet Train, and like there's a couple small things. Like we'll cover 3,000 Years of Longing, which is coming out at the end of August. But yeah, even though we don't have anything on that front, we are pretty busy, and covering Fan Expo is just like, man, we just like to create obstacles to jump through. So
I think it'll be fun. It's
it
something
will
we
be. It's
haven't,
just it's overwhelming when you're kind of looking at everything that's coming, but once you kind of just get into it, it's not that big of a deal. Like it kind of just becomes like, oh, like this is what we're doing. You're actually enjoying yourself. And
yeah, we'll have a review for Cobra Kai 5, right?
season
Or
5,
4. Yeah, 5. Which will be at the beginning of September as well. Yeah, and Fan Expo, we'll have an episode dedicated to that. Probably it might be a Fan Expo and TIFF preview show. That will be like the 2 big things on that episode. Or we might do individual one-off things depending on if there's a ton movie wise to cover TV, or it might just be like an overall like how we felt about the show and things like that. So but yeah, I'm so pumped for TIFF, man. It's getting close, so yeah, I'm excited. Eric, I also went out last night with my wife on a date night. So we went
ooh,
on a date last night. We went out for dinner, had a wonderful dinner at La Palma in Toronto. I had some we started off with some tuna, some like marinated tuna that was delicious. Then we had 100-layer lasagna, which was excellent.
was it 100
Um,
layers though?
I think so. I don't know. I trusted them. But then we had some cocktails at dinner. What else did we get for dinner? We had a nice steak and some potatoes and some broccolini. Got stuffed off that, got a little buzz off some cocktails, went to another cocktail bar, had a few more cocktails, and even had a very disgusting birthday cake vodka soda. Like, and then the waiter comes out and he's like, "Is it your birthday?" And we're like, "No." And he's like, it's like, okay. And then he's like, this is fucking terrible. And he gives it to us. And we're like, we started laughing and we're like, we kind of had to try it. It sounded wild. And he's like, sure. He's like, it's really bad. And then we're like, okay. And then we tried it. He was right. It was terrible. It was awful. It was sickly sweet. It smelled of birthday cake, which, I just had to try it. And it was not very good. But then we were sitting there and we're like, you know what? Let's go to a movie. I'm like, we haven't gone to the movies in a little while. Walked over to Varsity from Dundas and Bathurst almost. So went for a nice walk through the university and then got to Varsity and saw a 9:55 show of Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. So a movie we did not review.
Bodies.
I wish I heard that song. But a movie we didn't officially review because I had to miss
Well,
the
speak for
screening.
yourself. I reviewed it.
We
Yes.
as a pair, we
The
did not
royal
review
we.
it.
The royal we.
You reviewed it. People can
Yeah.
go check out your review on Rogers.
Yep.
But we haven't talked about it really because we didn't review it. So I thought it was very okay. I kind of feel indifferent about it,
You
which
mean
is kind of
mediocre?
yeah. I kind of just, I laughed. I thought it was clever at times. I didn't not like it, but I also didn't like it. So like I'm very like right in the middle of like it's watchable. Like I'm not mad that I went to go see it, but I also don't really have strong feelings one way or another. Like I just felt like it played out exactly how I expected it to play out. I found it very predictable. I found it very surface level with what it was kind of trying to deconstruct and poke fun at. Um, and just very obvious. Like, I don't know. Like, I just, throughout the whole thing, I knew exactly what it was doing. I knew exactly who it was kind of tearing apart. And I knew exactly where it was going to the point of like the second death I went, "Oh, okay. I kinda think I know what this is doing or what it's leading to." And ultimately, I was exactly right. And not that it's like if you outsmart a movie that makes it less enjoyable, because I feel like it's about the journey, not the destination, as long as it executes what that final twist or whatever is, even
That
if I
final destination.
yeah, even if I ultimately get there very early, like if it executes that well, then I don't care that I outsmarted the movie. Like it's not supposed to be this puzzle box that I'm like, I'm smarter than you, so be smarter, then I would enjoy it more. It was just like how it got there, played it very straight. You know, again, taking Gen Zers and kind of just a different we talked about how comparing it to Scream and how it, you know, the meta comedy and stuff like that, where I just felt like this movie, I'm like, okay, I get what you're doing, but it's fine. I don't know.
Yeah, I think like our reviews are pretty much in sync that it's a passive aggressive response to a film that is trying to be, you know, a generation's sort of calling card, you know, a horror film that defines sort of what it means to be a Gen Zer, but also, you know, exposing kind of the worst side of a generation to the point of being condescending, because like I wonder how many of the, you know, the writers and the directors, if there are if they are a part of that group, or if they're millennials or older. The characters are horrible, like they're
Yeah,
vapid, sort of
which
completely
is the point,
self-absorbed.
but like,
Yeah, but and I like the idea of, you know, them kind of getting their you know, their comeuppance, but
sure,
at the same time it's like you have to have a reason or a purpose for them to be so awful, and a reason for them to kind of, you know, act the way they do throughout this entire film, and there's really no reason with the exception of them just doing tons of cocaine and drinking and all being enablers in one way or another. You know, and when you're watching this thing, you're thinking to yourself, um, this isn't fun to watch in any way. It's not as clever as it thinks it
no, that's
is.
exactly how I was going to
Um,
describe it.
it's a movie that kind of feels weirdly uninspired,
Yeah,
uh, for a film that is claiming that it is doing something new within the genre. It's actually just borrowing from slasher films in general. There is so much padding in this movie. Like there are,
hmm,
you know, scenes that are just literally people walking in dark hallways for what feels like 2 to 3 minutes at a time as you're waiting for a jump scare. And, you know, it's one thing to criticize a Friday the 13th or a Halloween for doing that, but for
it's
critics
not trying
not.
to be any more than
No,
just a
no, no. The
slasher
reason
movie.
why slasher movies had those elongated scenes is because they wanted to make sure that they were long enough to be considered features. You know, this, the way that it's playing with that kind of feels like, is it making this weird commentary on the genre, or is it just kind of uninspired? And like the geography of this palatial estate, Pete Davidson's David character, you know, during this hurricane party, isn't well utilized, and I felt like at least they could have done more with the location. Like it
Yeah,
kind of felt like they were kind of trying to imply that maybe there was something kind of like keeping them there, and like they couldn't escape, in the same way that like Buñuel's, you know, the exterminating angel kind of plays up the idea of like a rich group of people stuck in this one room and they can't escape. And it reminded me
where it's really just
less.
a hurricane in this
Yeah, it
thing.
reminded me less of Scream or Halloween or A Nightmare on Elm Street, and it reminded me more of I still know what you did last summer, where you also have a group of people that are being picked off one by one, that are trapped during a hurricane, and Jennifer Love Hewitt's character is kind of um an outlier there, and even though you have characters that haven't talked to each other in a little while, which is kind of the difference here. Jennifer Love Hewitt's character is kind of like, she's hiding the fact that she's gone through this past trauma and reliving it again, and like it just kind of felt like it was closer to that. And there's a couple other movies like Tucker and Dale versus Evil and April's Fool's Day, where those movies kind of feel closer to Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And like A24 marketed this film as the next Scream. I already feel that they already have that film with Midsommar, which Midsommar to me is that movie that kind of feels like it's changing the game and how it plays with subtext, but also how genre is presented in certain style, and just again like that movie to me feels more in line with the idea of a group of horrible people that you don't like getting destroyed
Mhm.
horribly, but it also is weirdly comical. And it's kind of caught on over the years. Like it feels like Midsummer has kind of like infiltrated the pop culture in a way that like
Yeah.
people, when they reference like Swedish stuff, they talk about Midsummer,
Mhm.
where you have to earn that over time. You can't just declare yourself the next movie. Like Scream didn't do that when it came out. It just came
No.
out and kind of became that thing. And Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is like, we are this. And it's like, you're a kind of
Are
run of the
you?
mill
Yeah.
slasher movie.
Yeah.
Like
And even
you're
then, I don't even
yeah.
think I don't know. Even the slasher element, like I feel like they kind of I like the idea, and we got that, from Werewolves Within recently, and that
Well, it's
like kind of,
Mafia, right? Like
and
in
yeah,
like
Mafia Werewolf. It's like a
it's
classic
Will
game, and
Smith's
I like.
favorite game, the Slap Happy game.
I love that idea because like that game is really fun, like the secret killer kind of game thing, and putting that into a movie and preying on people's kind of uh, paranoia of that and making that a real life thing, I think is kind of interesting and diving into people's worst tendencies, especially this generation and things like that. And like, yeah, I don't know. I did find it kind of one note and surface level and just like, you have to kind of, it just wasn't even engaging or like fun to watch. Like there were times where I'd laugh or I'd kind of, the things that they were kind of poking fun at or ripping on. Like I'm like, okay, that is funny, but overall, it's just yeah, it just kind of, I was very just kind of stone faced the whole thing, and I was like, huh, that's it, huh? I'm like, all right, cool. It's like it's not a bad movie or anything. Like I think it's totally fine. It's not like super obnoxious like Assassination Nation, which I think
It's
is
not a Sam
like,
Levinson movie,
yeah,
which
like
thank
it's
God.
not, yeah, like it's not, what Sam Levinson was trying to do with like this generation and stuff like that, and really dive into that with Assassination Nation and even on Euphoria. Um, I feel like this movie isn't that obnoxious, even though all the characters are unlikable and are different elements of the worst things about Gen Z. And like, and I like having,
While being spoiled brats as
yeah,
well, like
exactly.
being
And having Lee
rich.
Pace in there as like, the older person with this group of young people, I think is interesting too, because you're going to have that mix in your audience. And um yeah, I don't know. Like it's fine. I don't think that there's anything necessarily like awful about it. It's just like, I don't know. I don't really have strong feelings either way.
Yeah, it's
And
underwhelming overall, and it just
yeah,
kind of feels like it's trying too hard to kind of
I
be something
yeah,
more than what it is. And I think like even the casting, like Pete Davidson kind of, maybe being stunt casting, but like the cast kind of feels overqualified for this
agreed.
material, maybe with the exception of the monologues. But again, like you look at a lot of slasher films, like it's usually up and coming actors or people that have like only done maybe one thing or nothing, and like it's always new people. And like this cast is good. Like it's a good group of actors, and they give more than what's needed, but it just kind of feels like you probably could have gotten the same out of like actors who just graduated from some acting school or first timers, and it would have worked maybe better. It might have been more modest in terms of its expectations, but like with the cast, with the promotion, it just feels like it's kind of setting itself up to be something more than what it is. And like, there's been no slasher flick or no horror movie in that way that that's really done that. Or it's like a slasher film doesn't come out, it's like, this is the definitive slasher movie that is going to define an entire generation, and if you don't agree with us, like, fuck you. And it's just you're just watching this thing, you're like, that's fine.
Yeah.
It'd be perfectly suited for Shudder.
Yeah, you're not wrong there.
Like, I felt
You're-
like I was watching a Shudder movie. Like, if this had not been made by A24 and played the festival circuit without a distributor, Shudder would have picked this up.
Yeah, which isn't necessarily an insult.
No,
It's
no, no,
just
no.
like,
But it's not. It's just, it's fine.
yeah, again, yeah, all the archetypes that they try to kind of, you know, deconstruct and satirize. I think, I get it. Those are the things that we would poke fun at or look at from that generation and stuff too. And
Or
they're
what has meaning and what
yeah,
doesn't, right?
yeah, exactly. Oversensitivity, just over analyzing the digital age, like all this kind of stuff is what they get into. And um I don't know, like yeah, I got it, and I was like, all right, cool. Anyways, that's all I have to say about Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. It's not really worth going to see, in my opinion. I think it's a fine streaming movie, to your point. Like, if it was on a Shutter, or when it eventually drops on some streaming service, like,
Amazon or
yeah,
Netflix
I
or
don't I
something.
don't think, or Apple, I don't know what the A24 deal is like with where their movies end up, but um
In hell.
it's totally, yeah, if you want to throw it on a streaming service, I get it, but I didn't love it. It was all right.
Yeah. I mean,
Um
with Scream 5 coming out this year, it felt like, okay, like that movie had more enthusiasm in the filmmaking and in the performances, and didn't take itself too seriously, even though it's part of this legacy. So it's like,
yeah.
in a year where the fifth movie in a franchise comes out and is actually kind of weirdly more elevated and excited to be back, and this
Mhm.
is like trying to be something new and kind of redefine the genre, it's like the fifth film in a franchise beat this thing, you know?
Yeah. Yep. I agree. What else have you been watching, man? Anything?
Let me look at the old letterbox. I've got some reviews on Rogers for things like Fall and Emily the Criminal, which Aubrey Plaza's excellent in that film. It's kind of Michael Mann adjacent as well. Like, it kind
Yeah,
of
you were
feels
mentioning it.
like a little bit like Thief, and even William Friedkin's To Live and Die in L.A. Let me see here. Oh, the other movie I watched last week after we recorded was Toby Hooper's Crocodile, which is a film I had not seen since the
Keep
early
talking. I'm going to the bathroom.
2000s. I rented on video back in the day. And I forgot that it was Toby Hooper that directed it. And essentially, it's just kind of like your classic creature feature movie, a bunch of, talking about slasher sort of tropes. It's a bunch of kind of obnoxious teens hanging out on spring break, getting picked off by a giant crocodile one by one. The effects are terrible. There's a couple interesting references to Hooper's previous films, Eaten Alive and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but overall the movie is just kind of a curiosity, I guess, for those who are interested in Hooper's entire career. But like, it just is one of those films where you can tell at that point where he was just, it was a job for him, and it was nothing else other than a job, which, nothing wrong with that, but it's an early 2000s B movie that is just so bad.
Did you have the alligator lounge on your or on your mind? Is that what you were?
No, I just came across it because I remember having rented it back in the day because I was a horny teen,
Oh,
wanting to see,
now you're a horny
nudity.
man.
Yeah, now I'm a horny old man. No, I was more curious because I didn't realize Toby Hooper had directed it, and I was kind of like, oh, I really hadn't watched anything of Toby Hooper's from, the late '90s, early 2000s, and so rewatching that now knowing it was a Toby Hooper movie, I was kind of like, oh, is there anything like of interest here that like he brings style wise? And again, there's like a reference to a chainsaw when the characters are held up in a um, kind of a drugstore for a scene, and then there's also this weird kind of mythology of this old abandoned hotel that kind of feels like it is but isn't the same hotel that was in Eaten Alive, where one of the characters owns a pet gator. um and that was heavily, like, when that movie was released, Eaten Alive, after Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that was kind of heavily promoted as a creature feature, but it really wasn't. It was kind of about like a kind of a Norman Bates serial killer type, but the posters all had like the gator on the front, so they were kind of like, oh, this is like a Jaws kind of movie. So this kind of
Mhm.
feels almost like, it's like, yeah, you want this movie from me, I'm gonna make it now because this is all I can get work wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not good. But if you're curious just to see where he was at that point in his career, I guess watch it. But it's
Sure.
terrible.
It was
The
direct to
sequel,
VHS.
direct to video, yeah.
Yeah.
The sequel, Crocodile 2, stars Martin Cove, which I'm very
Ah.
curious to maybe watch that because I have not seen that one.
Love it. Love it. Uh, I've been watching a shit ton of Dragon Ball. I cannot stop. I think the last time we checked in, I was just like at the beginning of
Last time on Dragon Ball, Matt was at the beginning.
on the next exciting episode of Dragon Ball. I have the theme song stuck in my head, the outro song stuck in my head. I'm on, I think, episode 141 of of Dragon Ball, which
It's
is
crazy, guy.
absolutely
Crazy.
you got to think like it. Each episode is 23 minutes, but 2 minutes is the intro, 2 minutes is the credits, and another 2 minutes is the last time on Dragon Ball. Like, so 6 minutes of that is like just reusing old shit or the intro and the credits. So you're getting like between 15 and 18 minutes of like new episode in each episode. So you actually can kind of fly through it. Um,
On
it's just
Nimbus Cloud,
yeah,
fly
it's
through it.
just very easy to watch, and I've just immensely enjoyed it. I'm on the last saga. I'm on the Piccolo Junior saga. Goku is now grown up, so you're kind of this feels like the prologue to Dragon Ball Z. Um, it really does feel like this is Dragon Ball Z at this point, but they're at the World Martial Arts Tournament with Piccolo Jr. and Kami. And for people who aren't, haven't watched Dragon Ball, you have no idea what we're talking about. But like, I highly suggest people go if you're interested at all, or you only watch Dragon Ball Z, or Dragon Ball, the new superhero movie or whatever the hell it's called, is coming out in North America this week, I believe. And that kind of sparked my interest, just seeing that trailer and or seeing that was coming out. I'm not necessarily trying to catch up in time for that, because there's no way I can watch all of Dragon Ball Z before then, but I'm impressed that I got through Dragon Ball. But I really do think that I'm so excited to watch Dragon Ball Z now, because like it's been a very, very long time. And watching Dragon Ball, I'm like, oh yeah, I never watched Dragon Ball. I thought I did, but I think the Piccolo Junior stuff that I'm thinking of is at the beginning of Dragon Ball Z. It's not the Dragon Ball Piccolo stuff, I
Yeah,
think.
well, I mean, in Dragon Ball Z, they just call him Piccolo,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and
So
in
I haven't
well, in
got to.
Dragon Ball Z, they do have scenes in Dragon Ball, like they have
Mhm.
flashbacks.
Yeah, totally. And that's where you'll get that context. But it's just cool to get the entire context, to see Goku
It's
grow up,
Mondo cool.
to see where Bulma and Yamcha and Krillin and Tien, and like seeing the origin of all their characters and their friendships and the world building is just been so much fun. And just that kind of earnestness of young Goku, and now as he becomes a man, and just that like pureness of that character, I think has been a joy to watch. And it's actually been more fulfilling than I even expected. Like, in this time where everyone can be so negative online, and we're living, in a world that's filled with negativity, like having a character like Goku, I forgot, like is just so like pure and earnest that I just like it's been refreshing, and it's been like even an outlook on my own life going to be trying to be more positive because that character just sees everything from the most positive view, even if he has to deal with like beating the shit out of someone or anything like that, or the most horrible things. He always wants a challenge or always wants to improve himself. Like, and I think that's been kind of the most refreshing thing about watching this, because I didn't expect that. I forgot, I again, I don't have a great memory, and like I remembered how much I loved Dragon Ball Z, but I don't remember a lot of it. And it's been so much fun to go back and like and learn this character again and see his origins, because I don't think I'd ever watched Dragon Ball. And it is an underrated series. Like I feel like everyone just talks about Dragon Ball Z, and I feel like only like super hardcore people maybe go back and watch Dragon Ball, but I do think it's worth people's time. Like it's been each saga has been enjoyable, and it is a little slower pace than what I remember of Dragon Ball Z. Like it's like we're getting into those big world events where Dragon Ball is a little bit more contained to like the martial arts tournament or just collecting the 7 Dragon Balls and dealing with Emperor Pilaf, or and even the tournaments themselves are so well put together and stylized. Like they just had it down, man. Like each tournament has a like when the tournament sagas are beginning, because they have like a special intro card and things like that. And the way that they do all something like Cobra Kai, you can definitely see takes inspiration from anime and Dragon Ball because like the tournaments in Cobra Kai um and the matchups and how hype it can be when characters come back, and like um what's it called, General Sao or Tao came back recently as a cyborg, and I'm like forgot that happened too, and I'm like that's so cool. Like it's just like those really silly things of like characters always coming back and like needing revenge on someone, and it's just so over the top, but like its world building is a lot of fun.
Kreese is a cyborg in
Yeah,
Cobra
I
Kai.
that's all I want, man. Like that kind of stuff is like I just want them to someone to fucking Kamehameha someone and just go full sci-fi on. I think that's the next level of Cobra Kai, but just become Dragon Ball. But I'm having a blast, and you're gonna join me to watch Dragon Ball Z, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, because
so
it's been a while, but I do have very fond memories of Dragon Ball Z, like especially like that Frieza saga. In particular, was kind of like
which is
event
like the first
viewing as a
one, right?
kid.
Like one of the
No.
first.
The first one is with Nappa and Vegeta. No,
Yeah, sorry.
Raditz. Raditz
Yeah,
is the first, but it's kind of like all
it
connected.
leads
So
into each other, right?
yeah,
Yeah, but
Raditz leads into Nappa and Vegeta, and then
and
Nappa
then
and
that leads
Vegeta
into
into
Frieza.
Frieza.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I'm excited to get into that because I like that's when you start to get the backstory of the Saiyans and like and everything, because you don't really get a lot of that in this show. Like Goku's background, you don't. It's all mystery of why he's so powerful and why he's uh like how he is, and I'm just like I don't know, the fight scenes are awesome too. It's so well choreographed and set up, and like and so much fun to watch, and that escalation where they always have to have someone stronger come in, or like a new power level and
yep.
like and exclaim like
It's over
I
9,000.
yeah like I love it. It's so stupid, but like, and it really needs to kind of feed that to you, but it adds to that, like where it's just like I don't know how Goku's gonna deal with this one, that guy's power level is this, and like always having to go to a higher place or find someone who's stronger, and like I love that
Or
right
get
when you
beaten up and then recover and then
exactly like I but that's the thing is like it actually makes it so engaging to watch, because you always whenever Goku thinks he's the most powerful being on the planet or in the universe, there's always someone who is stronger than him that he has to then train for to beat and become stronger, and he has that potential, and he always just needs to do that. And I think that's the magic of that show, and especially Dragon Ball, is like everyone looking at Goku being like, how the hell's this little kid beat up or defeat this person? And then Goku finds Mr. Popo, and Mr. Popo can beat the shit out of Goku. And then Goku's like, man, I got to train. And this guy's even stronger than me. And then you find Kami, and then Kami being, I forgot, was just like Piccolo split in half. Like, and I was like totally forgot about that too, where I'm just like, oh shit, yeah, Piccolo is like the worst parts of Kami split into that and then made just a pure evil version of this strong being. And it's like it's just the world building and the storytelling is like a lot of fun. And even though I remember it as a kid's show, I think it does have that fine line of like, I think I'm getting a different appreciation of it as an adult. And even someone like Master Roshi, which we kind of poked fun at and said is problematic over
Sex
the
perv.
last, like, yeah, it's just like that stuff is so interesting because he is a great character and he is a great mentor at times. And he is like, he was a great warrior, and he like some of his teachings to Goku and Krillin and his students are excellent. And like, and he really cares about these kids and these people, and really wants them to be the best versions of themselves. But then he's a sex pervert in the next scene, and you're like, dude, you're hurting yourself here. And especially with the writing of the character, I know it's like supposed to be comedic relief, but using that stuff as comedic relief feels very dated, um and not cool. Like, especially like when you think about how young men were brought up during like our time period of growing up, and you see things like this of Master Roshi like groping a woman without her permission, and you're just like, fuck, man, like this show would be great if you didn't have stuff like that played for laughs. And like, and then it kind of shows young men as they're watching this that might be something that's okay to do, or can be played off as like, oh, you old pervert. Like, and Bulma does get mad, or the other women in the show do get mad, but it's like, I don't know, like, why is that in here? And I get that different time, you know things like that, but um Master Roshi is a good character if you remove all that kind of stuff. So it's complicated and kind of shitty, but I'm still enjoying it like thoroughly. And I know Master Roshi becomes like just kind of a side character in Dragon Ball Z, I think, right?
Yeah, but still
Yeah,
pervy.
still pervy. So yeah, I like that Goku's grown up. It was very jarring because I've spent so many hours with young Goku and young Krillin, and then it kind of just skips those 3 years after Goku goes to train with Kami and Mr. Popo. And like, it they start his training and then they just skip the 3 years to the next tournament, and they already did a 3-year jump earlier when no one really aged that much. So
It's like the
um
rehearsal.
Nevis brought that up. She's like, it is like the rehearsal, which we'll get to next. But um yeah, it's fantastic. And we're gonna watch Dragon Ball Z Kai if anyone listening wants to follow along with us. So we're watching those versions, which are newly edited and condensed to its like purest form without the filler episodes, and has a different score to it, and some redone animation and stuff like that too. So I'm pretty pumped to check those out. So I can't wait. I have like 10 more episodes of Dragon Ball to see how that. Will
Can't wait to
Goku
get to the
defeat
GNU
Piccolo?
Force.
Yeah, can't wait, man. So I'm excited. Um, I think that's it on Dragon Ball. We'll continue next week on the next exciting episode of Untitled. We'll talk about Dragon Ball Z. The rehearsal, Eric.
Oh my god.
It's so good. It's so good. Going from dragons to Nate's Lizard Lounge, then the latest episode in that show, there's only one more left. I forgot it's
There
only six
that's it?
episode. Yeah, it's 6 episodes.
Damn it.
And which I'm okay with, but like
I
I
am
would
too,
watch
but at the
more. But
same time, it's like, yeah, I would like to watch a little bit more. But it is fascinating the last two episodes, because we didn't talk about the fielder method episode where we learn about the bit players and the background extras, and how they're vetted through this method of teaching, which
sure.
is insane. It literally is amazing to watch the levels of, it's like watching, like somebody go undercover, in like a cop show, and like
Yeah.
how, like, where is up and where is down, and kind of losing yourself in the role. With this, what Nathan Fielder does in these two episodes, especially with the Fielder method stuff, and with one of the acting pupils, Thomas, is
Seeing Thomas pop up at multiple times throughout the series now has been very, very funny.
it's so it's so cringy, but it's like the voyeuristic aspects of what Nathan does are always, or have always been, ethically questionable. This takes it to a whole new
But this is
level.
this is where I get into, like, it's such a we
What's
had this
real and
conversation,
what's
yeah,
not,
because
and
I'm like, was that even his apartment? Was that just a different Airbnb that they set up, or a set that they set up, and it's just magic of editing that makes it look like it's his apartment, kind of thing. Like, it's just it's genius in that way. And I keep having this conversation with other people because, like, my sister's friend Danielle, who's basically my sister as well, she messaged us and was like, I finally watched Nathan For You, and I finally started the rehearsal. And she's like, I was having an argument with my boyfriend about, is everyone an actor and is it real or not? So I went into that conversation with her of being like, I don't think it matters. I will still go to that point, but I go back and forth on it every week of who is involved, who is not, who is an actor, who's not. And I think that's a genius. The genius of this show is it's so well constructed, and there's so many layers of what people like. People who are on the show know that they're participating in a rehearsal, so inherently they are acting, right? So it's just like who they bring in, who's not acting or who is not in on it, versus the people who are in on it, versus the layers of then ripping on the people who are in on it, but then also bringing in people who aren't in on it. And then
or
that,
how far are they in
yeah,
on it? Because some people are
are in on it
further
to a
in on
certain
the,
level. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's where you can kind of get these layers of like what's real, what's not, what's scripted, what's not. Because like Nathan Fielder's obviously set up the entire series, and it seems like he had a story or a plot he wanted to go through. Like, and he manipulates people, and I
Or
don't
didn't
mean
want to pay for
manipulate.
therapy.
Yeah, or doesn't. I don't mean manipulate in a bad way either. I just mean like
I would
almost as
say
like chess.
distort. Like
Yeah,
this
just
kind of feels
like
like he's
chess pieces.
distorting,
Like,
like what's real and what's not. I don't think really even matters
yeah,
anymore. It's almost the distortion of reality and what he wants to be real or how he wants things to play out, and that he has some sort of control over his life and what he's doing career wise. And like watching these last two episodes, the most recent one kind of being this really kind of microcosm debate on theology about Judaism and Catholicism kind of clashing and living in
yeah.
the same house, and like this whole thing with like Mel Gibson and Apocalypto weirdly
That was
being brought in.
100% fed to her.
Yeah.
There's no way that she just said that after that
I
conversation.
I could see it being more believable if she had said Passion of the Christ,
Yeah.
because that to me kind of feels like okay, like that is a very like pro, like I mean Apocalypto is too,
But
but like
even when how she delivers that stuff,
right.
like it to me was finally proved to me that she is somewhat in on it. I still think she's mostly playing herself, like
Yeah.
I think a version of herself, but I
Angela.
do
Yeah.
Angela, but I do feel like they do feed her stuff, or they do tell her kind of, not necessarily script it, but they go, hey, be yourself, never waver from your Christianity, no matter what Nathan says to you, no matter what people do, stick to that. Be yourself for the most part. But like, I
Yeah.
do feel like there are times where she knows she's part of a television show, and she knows that she's part of this rehearsal, like where I feel like you can even tell where she's like, I just want you to get the best show you want. And like, if they feed her something, I feel like she would, I can tell just on her face whether she seems like she's smirking sometimes, or like the way that Apocalypto and Mel Gibson line, and the way she's like, it's my favorite, he's my favorite director, and like how that's delivered right after what he says. I'm like, that is absolutely fake, but it's still very funny. Like,
Yeah.
it's still very, very, very funny. And I think like even with the woman, the tutor that they bring in, and how that all ends up is like, I don't think that that's scripted. I just think that's very smartly casted, where they vetted that woman and knew her views, right, and knew her sort of extreme views, and they cast her for that reason, knowing that she would bring that up and it would be the perfect bookend to the episode, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the manipulation I'm talking about, or how to skew the conversation to what you want.
Or how Nathan himself can't
Yeah,
even like I mean it, that the whole Palestine Israel thing, like that is something that nobody can untangle.
yeah.
And then when this tutor starts saying like you need to use your platform at the end of the
Hmm.
episode, and it's like it's not until the end of the episode where we get this really
And
like
the music that plays in the
complicated
background is like,
conversation.
The music that plays and that it smashes the credits as the conversation is still going. I'm like, this could be either way of like, it's a Nathan Fielder punchline and he found a woman who would perfectly execute that joke, or it's a real woman.
Yeah.
Or it's a mix of both, right? Like I think a lot of these people, like even people who have been on the show have come out, like the cheap chick in the city woman like wrote on her blog being like, I'm so glad so many people, but all of these things I'm like, it could be plants. And like even I went on Angela's Instagram yesterday. This is how deep I've gone. Where like I've gone so deep, Eric, where I'm like, she only created the Instagram in March of this year. And I'm like, that's when they probably would have still been shooting the show or doing stuff. And like even her posts feel very Nathan Fielder bits or jokes. Like there's some of her dancing, which reminds me of his YouTube video of him dancing to, I forget what song it was, but like there's stuff like that where I'm like, this whole thing to me could be this elaborate, like
Con.
they're using real people and they are mostly themselves in the show, but it's almost like they found people who don't mind being uh versions of themselves that are a little heightened or something like that, and they didn't necessarily script them, but they guided them through this thing because these people wanted to be part of a television show, or it was, I think it's a mix. People that they say they're going to help, people that are actors, and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's what makes the show amazing. Like the Nate's Lizard Lounge thing is hilarious. And like those are the things that I do think are real, kind of like his dumb Starbucks thing where he's like, he did get a liquor license and opened this bar just for that one off joke. like, and that's the stuff that's very funny. And like, you can kind of tell like who's in on it and who's not, but
But it is hard though too,
yeah.
because again, like it complicates it with like how much does each person know, and how deep is each subject or person that is either being included in the rehearsal, or like even his parents. Like the thing that I laughed at when they were talking, when they were having that picnic outside, and the mom was
Yeah.
kind of like surprised that the son that Nathan wasn't really sticking up for himself for Judaism, but then the dad is just sitting there silent, like
Yeah.
scoffing like food, and he's just like says nothing,
I
and
don't
like
want
you're
any
just,
part of this.
yeah, and it's funny because it's like, again, like even that I was like, are these Nathan's real parents? Like it has me even questioning that. Like
Yeah.
it's the level of
I could see it being his real parents, but he's like, Mom, I'm doing
yeah.
this comedy show. I need you to really
Dad, can you
push.
just eat this?
Yeah.
Not say
And
anything.
I need you to tell me how much I should be sticking up for my religion or whatever, because that's the
Yeah.
story he wants to tell in that episode, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's the type of thing where I think he blends fiction and reality in such an interesting and fun way, where I don't think you can tell what's real and what's not. And I don't think it matters what's real and what's not, because it just makes for a really enjoyable, cringy, disturbing, funny, like just watch, right? And it's just like it's so elaborate and so well thought out, in that it's just I keep repeating the same things each week, but I feel like it's building on itself each week to being this, what he ultimately wanted it to be, which is like not about himself, but kind of about himself and
Yeah.
like
Well, he's
his
created his own world, like he's created the world that he truly feels like he's probably most comfortable in. And like even him rehearsing, his rehearsals within the rehearsals,
yeah.
there's this amazing sort of rehearsal sequence with him and a fake Angela where it's just like
That smash cut to that was so jarring at that point too, and it was great.
it's some of the best editing I think on like any show or film I've seen this year. And like you watch it and you think to yourself, like you like that first episode, I almost feel is like a Trojan horse kind of thing, where it's like this is kind of like what each episode is going to be like. It's going to be episodic, and I'm going to be the guy that
Yeah.
is going to help this
Like Nathan for
person.
You helping a business kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And then it's like, no, it's actually me trying to like get through some things and like use HBO's budget to do it, which is incredible. I would I would love to see what those final numbers are on like how much he spended on all these sets and hiring all these actors, and what it took to create the social media accounts and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff, and just the orchestration of it all is just incredible. And it kind of feels again like he's built this world up so much that it is now real in some way, but like it's still a facade, and like it's just like it's amazing to watch how kind of just bizarre this whole
Hmm.
experience is, because again, like it's like how much of it is real, how much of it is a bit, how much of it is actually somewhat kind of personal or sincere coming from him as a person. And then like there's this whole kind of thing of like even like the people that are making this, like the the camera people and the producers and the writers on this show, like how deep are they in on it,
I
and like
think
what's the
everyone's
level.
I think a lot, like even Angela leaving, and I know we're sort of spoiling it. It's not, unless you see this show, it's not spoiling anything because out of context, you have no idea what we're talking about. But you can skip over on the time codes. But um like even her leaving felt like it was something that they wanted for the story rather than something like even all the bits of her not really doing anything when he wasn't there, like and even like you said of him, working on his own shit. I think the character of Nathan Fielder is working on shit like and which is based on himself, but it's almost like Larry David in Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I feel like it is a heightened version of himself. Like it is that Larry David always talks about, like it's that character of Larry David in Curb Your Enthusiasm is me if I had no filter and didn't feel like I couldn't say whatever I wanted at all times or something like that. Where Nathan Fielder, I feel like it's him looking at himself so it is real in a sense of him going his either worst tendencies or the things that he's anxious about, but then making them elevated and building this character that is even more awkward engaging with people and things like that. And like even listening to his interview with Alexa Demi on the A24 podcast I threw on the other night because I was so um into this, like you can tell it's a character he's playing, right? Like you can tell he's a smart guy that I think is personable and things like that, even if some of this stuff is how he feels on the inside, but then he lets that out in this character that he's built of Nathan Fielder that's the same character on Nathan For You and this show, which is rooted in reality, but I think is that Larry David thing of like a heightened version of that. And then he's working on that character throughout this show and building this arc for that character of Nathan Fielder. And I think again, it just sounds really weird when I put it out there of that meta layer of what the show is. And I think it's like almost a sequel to Nathan For You because it's like the same character in both of those shows, I think, if that makes any sense. But
I mean, he's
um
eating feces in this as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All of that stuff is great. And it's all just like, yeah, I have no idea what this last episode is going to be, but um I could see it being that whole thing of like you said, like this was a whole con to see if I don't know, like him revealing that the whole thing was like the real rehearsal was, I don't know, something of us watching it and something that extremely meta layer, but I think he'll just continue the bit of it being about that character of Nathan Fielder throughout this show. So
On a special episode of the Rehearsal, my guest is David Zaslav, and he
he's
wanted me to
canceling this show.
he wanted me to spend $95 million on this
I,
show, but in order to do that, I had to pretend it was Batgirl.
I'm with you where I would love to know how much money he spent on this show. Like what was the budget? Because I'm sure it wasn't crazy, but it was crazy for him and
Yeah,
the stuff that he likes to do, right?
and
Like
he's indirectly spending it on himself in a way. Like it kind
yes,
of
and
feels
just in
like
the
it's
most
all
ridiculous ways. Like the satire is almost like even for productions like this, he's kind of poking fun at them, right? Of being
yeah.
like, "Oh, I
Well, like the
spent money
holiday
to."
stuff is
Yeah.
amazing. Like when he's looking out the window and it's the holidays, but it's only like it's like a weird like snow globe where the
Yeah.
perimeter's only been
Yeah.
covered in it, but like again, like it kind of shows you how ridiculous making a movie or a TV show can be, especially when you're shooting out of season, or you're kind of pretending like be you know playing a version of yourself or playing somebody else is silly, and like watching this is kind of fun, and like even the
Even
the
that
religious,
conversation. Sorry, keep going.
yeah, no, the religious stuff, like I think actually there is some interesting things being said with like, no matter what you do, unless you're agnostic or atheist, but even then, like with atheism, like it can be very kind of my way or the highway as well.
Yeah.
um it's saying something, and then like ultimately it's like the, like I like when he takes his fake son to the synagogue and says like, oh, it's kind of boring. you know
No, that line is so great. He's like, I haven't gone in a real long time because it's boring. And like
Yeah,
immediately cuts to them in
and
there.
that's what religion
And
mostly is, but religion's also kind of like, to me it's always kind of been, well, it's your opinion, and you're welcome to that opinion, and you can have that opinion, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your opinion is better than somebody else's. But there's this thought process that like, your god or your opinion is superior to somebody else's,
yeah.
and because of that, you have the right to act in a certain way or behave in a certain
Well,
way.
that's why that last punchline is so funny, right?
Yeah.
Like that is so perfect. And the one last thing I wanted to bring up is I even love the conversation he has with the actor version of Angela, that where she brings up being like, this is your project. Like, is this supposed to be silly? Are you making fun of me? And I think that's so interesting that he got ahead of that, because like that's the conversation that's been on Twitter and things since the show premiered. And it gets brought up in the show. And he's even bringing up why he's making the show to this actor version of Angela, and like kind of deconstructing that even, and getting ahead of what he probably assumed people would talk about on social media about the show. So I think it even goes to that other level of analyzing what the show is, which I didn't expect it to go to either. It's so good. So I can't wait for that last episode. And you tweeted this and I messaged you as well, being like, I might have to put this on my like best films of the year list, because it's that good. Like
Yeah,
it's
between this
really,
and,
really good.
Heat 2 for me, like I'm like, this might be like a weird abstract here,
Yeah, like
but it is something like, again, like, if you haven't seen Nathan For You, or you haven't watched this, give it a shot. I know that cringe comedy can be really difficult to
it's
get through,
gonna
and it
not be
is
for everyone. Yeah.
it's this, like at times there are moments where I can't even look directly at the screen because it's
Yeah.
like I don't want to see the reaction, but at the same time you're just kind of flabbergasted by like just how far Nathan Fielder's willing to go for the bit. And it's incredible that he's able to set certain people up in a way and manipulate them in certain aspects. And then other ways, it's like maybe there is some truth to it. Like even the scene where the actor Angela is kind of really letting him have it. And then at the end of that conversation, Nathan kind of almost feels like his guard is being let down a little bit. It's like, when can we do that again, but nicer this time? Maybe
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
something there where it kind of like it really did get to him.
hmm Good shit. Go watch it. This is definitely not going to be for everyone, but um, it is well worth your time. Um, any news and stuff we missed this week, Eric? I don't
I
know.
don't think so. I mean,
It's
it's,
been
I
kind
mean,
of a light month for news and stuff. I feel like even August, I feel like it's just like the month everyone takes off, because it's like right before that big festival season starts. Like it's that month people are sort of going back to school in the US or prepping to go back to school in Canada. Like I just feel like August is kind of a dead zone.
it is the David Cronenberg
Yeah.
dead zone. Um, yeah, there's not a lot in terms of like casting or movie news or what have you. I'm just looking now, like,
Yeah, I'm kind of going through too. There hasn't really been trailers, I don't think, right?
no.
Um
I mean, Triangle of Sadness, but I didn't watch that trailer just
I
because,
did,
like,
yeah.
I didn't like that is the one time a year where I do stop watching trailers, is
It was
when
right
stuff
before
is
TIFF.
playing at TIFF. It's kind of like I just rather watch it, you know.
That's a good point. I watched it. I don't think it gave away too much because it's also out of context, but I definitely think it looks great, and I'm excited to see it. So I did watch Better Call Saul as well, but I'll wait until the series finale, which is tomorrow. Whoa. Um, I forgot that's
Whoa.
exciting. No, I didn't think it would. I'm like, oh shit, it's tomorrow. Um, that's wild. So I'll wait and have that on the next episode. Talk about how I feel like it all wrapped up. But the penultimate episode, um, excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. It's so good. I think this series is going to end up being better than Breaking Bad for a lot of people. I'm kind of on the fence, but I really think Saul Goodman is literally the main character. I think I said that last time, of this universe, right? And it brings so much more context and nuance to Breaking Bad and that character, and like it makes it a much more tragic story for Saul Goodman rather than being this kind of flamboyant, over the top criminal lawyer, literal criminal lawyer. But um and Bob Odenkirk is the best. And Ray Seahorn too, like she crushed it in the last episode. So um really dug that. Still killing time to see what else we can talk
Well,
about.
speaking of Bob Odenkirk, who was Nobody, which was produced by David Leitch, who David Leitch has a film out in theaters right now called Bullet Train.
Yeah.
He's
I'm gonna
working on
see it
his
still, but
he's working on his next movie, The Fall Guy, which is a remake of a TV show, as a film with Ryan Gosling, which just cast Emily Blunt. So that's something, I guess.
cool. I have been watching Harley Quinn. I think we're gonna do a review of the first 5 episodes. Um, that'll be coming in the next week or so. I would like to get that up. So I've been really enjoying it. I've only watched the first 2. But I know Eric and I both really like that. So we kind of want to give you guys a review of review in progress of Harley Quinn season 3, which is airing on Adult Swim here in Canada on Saturday nights at like 11:30 or something like that. Which
Talking
is
about like scheduling on
yeah,
our
I know.
She-Hulk review, like it's always weird when like something good maybe doesn't necessarily kind of find an audience right away, and then you have to kind of like relegate it to almost again like a dead zone.
Right, because it's on HBO Max in the US and it's on Fridays, but like in Canada, it is a weird. I know Rick and Morty, that's their kind of time slot on Sunday nights, I think. And it's coming back in a couple weeks, but I know Adult Swim, they don't mind just showing stuff like super late, even if it's a premiere or something, and that's kind of where their audience kind of goes. But yeah, I'm enjoying it, but we'll talk about it more once we both watched it. What else? Yeah, it's kind
Maria
of
Bakalova was cast in Seinfeld's Pop Tart movie Unfrosted
no. I forgot that was a real thing.
for Netflix. Yep.
Is he writing it and then starring in it? Is that what it is? Or
I think he's just directing it.
Jerry Seinfeld's directing the Pop Tart movie?
Yeah.
All right.
Jerry,
Okay.
what's the deal with these Pop Tarts?
Isn't it based on a joke that he used to do or something?
I think
Is
so, or
that what
it's
it
looking
was?
at like the behind the scenes.
Of the creation of the Pop
Yeah.
Tart?
Flamin' Hot
Okay.
Cheetos and
Yeah.
and
Is
and
that movie still getting made?
I think it's done.
Is it?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it probably plays at like Sundance or something next year, and like opens like it streams on Hulu and Disney Plus in Canada because it's Eva Longoria who directed it, right?
Right.
So
Right.
good stuff.
I just pregnant pause. Yeah, I don't know. There's not really much, everyone. Like I'm kind of going through this, and you'd be like, "Hey, Matt and Eric, why don't you prep this stuff before?" And
Well, that's it. That would
I
be
go,
smart.
how dare you? How dare you? Don't you want to just listen to us scroll through to see if there was any news this week? Because that's exciting. Anyways, let's wrap it. I don't even know what to call this last segment. I'm just gonna say the rehearsal is the last segment.
Yeah.
Thank
Call
you.
this the Dead Zone, the last segment.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, now I lost the time code though. Can I get it back? Ooh, I got it. Hell yeah. Let's call this the Dead Zone. Thank you all for listening or watching. We really do appreciate it. Go check out our review for I Am Groot. Uh, we somehow stretched that out to 18 minutes, so go listen to that review. As well as we'll have a review for She-Hulk coming up this week, right before the premiere. So keep an eye out for that. And we'll have tons of stuff over the next month or so, because we'll be covering Fan Expo Canada. We'll be covering a few films like 3000 Years of Longing, like Eric mentioned, and Harley Quinn we're going to do a review for, and some other things leading into the festival. And then you'll start to see some reviews trickle in, hopefully pre-festival.
Trickle.
Or I forget, it's been so long since we pre-screen stuff. Do we usually hold them until the day of the premiere, or do we post stuff early? I forget.
I think it just depends on
If it premiered
what
at
we're
another festival,
yeah,
or
and
like,
what we're advised by
yeah,
the studio, because we do
yeah,
follow the embargoes, like
totally, yeah.
unlike some people.
I'm excited for that. So we should start screening TIFF movies soon, and then all of September 8th to the 18th, right?
Yep.
We'll have tons of stuff for you guys. So
8
I
to the
cannot wait.
18th, and we're the 8th
Best
most
movie.
popular film Canadian podcast, whatever bullshit.
Yeah. So keep an eye out for all of that.
This is why we're the best, because we don't prepare anything.
You know what? No one likes a fucking dork that prepares anything.
Nerdlinger.
One stop shop, Untitled_movies. On Letterboxd, that's where you'll find everything: YouTube, podcast services, all that jazz. You can find more of my work around the internet, mostly at untitledmoviepodcast.com, and on season 4 of Family Feud, which will be premiering Family Feud Canada, which will be premiering on CBC in September, right in the middle of the festival. So there's a lot going on.
Good stuff.
Follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Marchand. You can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene. Matt Rohrbeck and I talked about TIFF and the Batgirl breakdown on the latest episode. So that will probably be available by the time you are listening or watching this. It's basically like this, except shorter and with less swears. No
Is it
swears.
better
to be
prepared?
exact. No, not really. But it's more truncated. So if you want a shorter version, it's there. And you can find more of my social medias at the EM6211.
Until next time.
Let the bodies hit the floor.
R.I.P.